Chapter 1. Evolution of Computers. Computer is an electronic machine. It is, in fact, a wonderful machine that can perform a variety of tasks. It is very complicated in its construction, but very easy to use. As far as its invention is concerned, it was not invented by any one person. Actually, man wanted to develop a calculating machine. Working on this concept for many centuries, man finally succeeded in developing a machine that we use today as computer. Earlier, man used fingers, stones and bones to keep records of their cattle and money. But they were incapable of calculating large numbers and mathematical operations. About 5,000 years ago, Chinese developed the first calculating device called abacus. Abacus. It was made up of a simple wooden frame with rods. Each rod had a definite number of beads. It was mainly used by merchants and traders to count the money and items they sold or bought. It was also used to perform basic calculations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Students in the primary classes are still taught abacus to perform calculations quickly and accurately. After abacus, no any significant calculating machine was developed for centuries. Napier's bones. In 1616, Sir John Napier made a calculating device named Napier's bones. It was made up of rectangular rods made up of bone, ivory, wood, or metal. These rectangular rods had numbers written on them. Napier's bones was mainly used for multiplication and division. Pascaline. In 1641, Blaise Pascal invented the Pascaline, the first mechanical calculator. It looked like a rectangular box. Numbers were shown on the rotating wheels. It was mainly developed for accounting purposes. The first Pascaline could handle only 5-digit numbers, but later versions could handle 6 and 8-digit numbers as well. Difference engine. The difference engine was designed by Charles Babbage in 1822. It was designed to do mathematical operations up to 6 decimal places. It was one of the earliest automatic calculators. Analytical engine. In 1837, Charles Babbage developed another calculating machine called analytical engine. It was a mechanical computer first of its kind that could solve even more complex calculations, including multiplication and division. The basic parts of the analytical engine resembled the components of a simple computer system. It had 5 units: input, output, store, mill, and control. Generations of computers. Analytical engine created a base for the development of modern computer. The computer that we use today was not built in a day. It has gone through different stages of development during past several decades. Computers can be classified into different generations based on the specific technologies used to build them. Let us discuss the characteristics of each generation. First generation computers, 1940 to 1958. Following were the characteristics of first generation computers. They used vacuum tubes. They used punched card for input and output. They calculated data in milliseconds. They were very large in size but had small internal storage capacity. Their programming speed was very slow. They were expensive and consumed a large amount of energy. Examples: Mark I, ENIAC, EDSAC, EDVAC, and UNIVAC. Let us read about first generation computers in detail. Mark I. In 1944, Howard H. Aiken designed the first fully automatic calculator called Mark I. It was about 15 meters long. The machine was slow and took 3 to 5 seconds for each calculation. ENIAC. In 1946, J.P. Eckert and J.W. Mauchly developed the first electronic computer called ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, to solve computing-related problems. EDSAC, Electronic Delay Storage Automatic Calculator. The EDSAC was designed by Professor M. Wilkes of Cambridge University, England, in the year 1949. It was slightly faster than the ENIAC. It weighed approximately 6,000 kilograms and occupied an area of 20 square meters. It was the first electronic computer that used stored programs. EDVAC, Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer. The EDVAC was proposed by John P. Eckert and John W. Mauchly in 1944 when the ENIAC was being developed. John von Neumann, who also gave the concept of stored programs, joined them later to help in designing the EDVAC. It was finally completed in 1948. The EDVAC weighed approximately 8,000 kilograms and covered an area of 45.5 square meters. It had capacity to hold stored programs as well as data. UNIVAC. J.P. Eckert and J.W. Mauchly developed another computer, UNIVAC, Universal Automatic Computer, in 1951. It was the first commercially available electronic computer. Weighing around 13,000 kilograms, it covered 35.5 square meter area. It was the first computer to handle both numeric and text data. Second generation computers, 1959 to 1963. Transistor. They used transistors instead of vacuum tubes. They used punched cards and magnetic tapes for input and output. They were faster, cheaper, smaller, and more efficient than the first generation computers. They could calculate data in microseconds. They were costly and could be used only for specific purposes. Examples: RCA 501, IBM 1401. Third generation computers, 1964 to 1970. They used integrated circuits, ICs, in place of transistors. An IC is also called a semiconductor chip and may contain thousands of transistors. They used a keyboard for input and a monitor for output. They used an operating system to run different programs at the same time. They were smaller, faster, cheaper, and more efficient than early computers. Hence, they were made available for general public. Examples: IBM 360, IBM 370, Apple I, ICL 1900. Fourth generation computers, 1971, present. They use microprocessors. Microprocessors are very large-scale integrated circuits, VLSICs, which contain many ICs on a single chip. They use keyboard, mouse, scanner, and so on for input, and monitor, printer, speakers, and so on for output. They are more powerful and reliable than previous generations. They have high storage capacity. They are much smaller, faster, and cheapest among all previous generations. Examples: IBM PC, Apple Macintosh, HP 9000. Fifth generation computers, future. Computers with artificial intelligence are put in the fifth generation computers. These computers are expected to come in near future with the following characteristics. Artificial intelligence, a technology that makes a computer able to think like humans and perform human-like tasks such as voice recognition, decision-making, and translate between languages. Use of super large-scale integrated chips. Ability to recognize image and voice and react accordingly. Ability to solve complex problems including decision-making, and logical reasoning. Classification of computers. You studied about the classification of computers on the basis of different developmental stages. Let us classify the computers on the basis of their size, performance, and capacity. Supercomputers. Supercomputers are the most powerful and reliable computers. However, they are bigger in size and very expensive. They often occupy several rooms. They can process trillions of instructions per second. Government organizations and large industries used them for nuclear energy research, weather forecasting, earthquake studies, space research, and so on. Examples: Param, Cray. Mainframe computers. Mainframe computers can also process data at very high speed, and they are also quite expensive. They can be used by more than 100 users at a time. They are mainly used for bulk data processing in the big organizations. Examples: IBM Z Series, NEC 610. Mini computers. Mini computers are less advanced as compared to mainframe computers in terms of speed and storage capacity. They are also less expensive than mainframe computers. They are used for stock analysis, reservation, banking, etc. Examples: PDP-2, HP 2100. Microcomputers. Microcomputers are small in size and less expensive. They are also called personal computers as only one person can use it at a time. Microcomputers are specially designed for general use like entertainment, education, and office work. Microcomputers are of the following types. Desktop computers are designed to be placed on a desk, so they are called desktop computers. Laptops are smaller in size than a desktop computer and can be placed on the lap of the user. Tablets and palm tops are much smaller than laptops and can be carried along easily. Advantages of a computer. Accuracy. It always gives correct result unless it is given wrong data or instructions. Speed. It can process huge data and perform huge calculations very quickly. Diligence. It does not get tired or bored like humans do. It can work for hours doing the same job. High storage. It can store a large amount of data and information for future use, which can be easily retrieved whenever it is needed. Versatility. It can perform different tasks, so it is used at different places for different kinds of work. Multitasking. It can work upon different tasks simultaneously. Limitations of computer. A computer cannot work on its own. It needs to be instructed what to do and how to do. It cannot take decisions on its own. It is believed that these sorts of limitations would be removed in the 5th generation computers. Chapter 2. More about Windows 7. Computer window. The computer window is used to view the contents of hard disk, compact disk read-only memory, CD-ROM, pen drive, and other removable storage devices. The computer window has 5 parts. Address bar. It is the uppermost horizontal bar of the computer window. We can use it to find the location of a file or folder. We can also use it to navigate from one drive to another. Search box. The search box is used to search and locate a file or folder in the computer system. Explorer bar. The left section of the computer window is the Explorer bar. It shows all the folders and their files in the computer. Working area. This is the section at the right side of the computer window. We can open a file or folder from here. Details section. The horizontal bar at the bottom of the computer window is the Details section. It displays the details of selected files and folders. When you click on its arrows, a list of associated files or folders of that particular location gets displayed. Click on the required file or folder name to view its contents. Libraries. It contains the documents, pictures, music, and video folders. All documents are, by default, stored in the Documents. All music files are stored in the Music folder. All pictures are stored in the Pictures folder. All video clips and files are stored in the Video folder. Network. Network is an option which gives access to and information about folders and files on other connected computers. Using this option, you can also share files and folders in your computer so that others can access it from their computers. Note, in earlier versions of Windows operating system, network option was known as My Network Places. Help and Support feature. The Windows Help and Support feature provides help and assistance. You can open Help and Support feature by clicking Start, Help and Support. You can select a topic that is listed or search for an unlisted topic by typing the required text in the search text box. A list of related topics will be displayed. You can also access help by pressing F1 key directly from the keyboard. Search feature. Using the search feature, you can search for a saved file or folder. Use these steps to search for a file. First, click on the Start button. Second, type the file or folder name in the search text box and press the Enter button. The computer will perform the search and give you a list of related files in a window. You can also search for files or folders in the computer window. First, open the computer window. A text box named Search will be available at the top right of the window. Second, type the name of the folder or file which has to be searched in the search box. Third, it simultaneously displays a list of files having the same characters you typed. The entire file name or the location of the file need not be remembered. All the data regarding that file, like the date on which it was last modified, its type, author, path, etc., will be displayed. By default, the search feature searches for the specified file or folder in all the drives. If you want to search a file in a particular drive, just select the drive from the folder pane and type the file name or folder name in the search box. Renaming drives of computer. Use these steps to rename a drive. First, open the computer window. Second, right-click on the drive which you want to rename. A context menu is displayed. Third, select the rename option and click on it. Fourth, type the new name and click outside or press the Enter key. Or click on the drive and press F2 key on the keyboard to rename the drive. Chapter 4. Objects in Word 2013. Inserting word art. Word 2013 has a unique text style feature called word art. The word art gallery includes different styles that can be applied to any text. The shape and formatting characteristics of a word art object are called word art styles. Creating word art. To insert a word art in your document, follow these steps. First, place the cursor at the position where you want to insert a word art object. Second, click the Insert tab. Third, click the Word Art button in the text group and select a word art style. A placeholder appears in the document. Fourth, replace the placeholder with the text you want. Formatting word art. You can use the options available on the Format tab under Drawing Tools to change the appearance of your word art text. Follow these steps to format word art text. First, select the word art text. Second, click the Format tab. Third, in the Word Art Styles group, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Text Fill option and select the desired color. You can also select a Gradient Fill option. Fourth, to change the text outline, click the drop-down menu of the Text Outline option and select the desired color for the outline. Fifth, you can also change the thickness, weight, and line style dashes. If you want outline to be transparent, select No Outline. To add a visual effect to the text, click the Text Effects button and select the desired effect. Seventh, to change the text direction, click the Text Direction button and select the desired effect. Eighth, to rotate text, click and drag the rotation handle. Inserting text boxes. Sometimes we need to add some relevant but extra text to our document. Adding a text box is suitable for this purpose. The text within the text box can also be formatted as a word art. To add a text box to your document, follow these steps. First, place the cursor at the position where you want to insert a text box. Second, click the Insert tab. Third, click the Text Box command in the text group. From the drop-down gallery, select one of the styles or the Draw Text Box option. Fourth, click, hold and drag the mouse to draw the text box. Fifth, a blinking cursor appears inside the text box. Type the desired text. If you wish to change the font, size and color of the text, select the text or the text box, click the Home tab and use the Font Group commands. Sixth, click anywhere outside the text box to return to the document. Formatting a text box. You can format the text box by changing its style, color and shape and even add effects like shadows. Follow these steps to format a text box. First, select the text box. Second, click the Format tab and in the Insert Shapes group, select the Edit Shape command. Select Change Shape option in the menu and choose the desired shape in the gallery that opens. Suppose we select the wave shape, the text box will appear in the selected shape. Now, if you wish to rotate the shape, click and drag the rotation handle. Third, to change the fill color, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Shape Fill option in the Shape Styles group and select the desired color. Fourth, if you want to change the outline color, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Shape Outline button in the same group and select the desired color. Fifth, to apply visual effects such as shadows, glows, etc., click the Shape Effects option and select the desired effect. Changing shape of the text. To change the shape of the text and to make it more appealing, follow these steps. First, select the text box or select the text in the text box. Second, click the Format tab and select the Text Effects option in the Word Art Styles group. Third, click on the Transform option and select an effect from the sub-menu. The text appears with the selected effect. Inserting text boxes. Sometimes we need to add some relevant but extra text to our document. Adding a text box is suitable for this purpose. The text within the text box can also be formatted as a word art. To add a text box to your document, follow these steps. First, place the cursor at the position where you want to insert a text box. Second, click the Insert tab. Third, click the Text Box command in the text group. From the drop-down gallery, select one of the styles or the Draw Text Box option. Fourth, click, hold and drag the mouse to draw the text box. Fifth, a blinking cursor appears inside the text box. Type the desired text. If you wish to change the font, size and color of the text, select the text or the text box, click the Home tab and use the font group commands. 6th, click anywhere outside the text box to return to the document. Formatting a text box. You can format the text box by changing its style, color, and shape, and even add effects like shadows. Follow these steps to format a text box. First, select the text box. Second, click the Format tab and in the Insert Shapes group, select the Edit Shape command. Select Change Shape option in the menu and choose the desired shape in the gallery that opens. Suppose we select the wave shape, the text box will appear in the selected shape. Now, if you wish to rotate the shape, click and drag the rotation handle. Third, to change the fill color, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Shape Fill option in the Shape Styles group and select the desired color. Fourth, if you want to change the outline color, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Shape Outline button in the same group and select the desired color. Fifth, to apply visual effects such as shadows, glows, etc., click the Shape Effects option and select the desired effect. Changing shape of the text. To change the shape of the text and to make it more appealing, follow these steps. First, select the text box or select the text in the text box. Second, click the Format tab and select the Text Effects option in the Word Art Styles group. Third, click on the Transform option and select an effect from the sub-menu. The text appears with the selected effect. Inserting pictures. Pictures can also be inserted in a document to make it look more informative and attractive. You can insert pictures that are on your computer or from the internet. Inserting pictures from your computer. First, place the cursor at the position where you want to insert the picture. Second, click the Insert tab and click the Pictures button in the Illustrations group. The Insert Picture dialog box opens. Third, move to the folder which contains the images you need. Select the desired image or images in the folder. Fourth, click on Insert button. The picture appears in the document. Inserting pictures from the internet. Word 2013 provides the following options to insert pictures online. Bing Image Search. This option helps you search the internet for online images. OneDrive Personal. Using this option, you can browse the different locations on your computer and insert the desired pictures. To insert pictures available online, follow the steps given below. First, click the Insert tab. Second, click the Online Pictures button in the Illustrations group. Third, in the Insert Pictures dialog box that appears, type a search term in Bing Image Search. Press Enter to begin the search process. The search results will appear in the dialog box. Fourth, select the desired image and click the Insert button. The image will appear in the document. Formatting pictures. You can also format the picture you have inserted in your document. When you select an image or a picture, a new Format tab appears under Picture Tools. This tab has a number of options to change the style and appearance of your image. Let us discuss some of the options available in cropping an image. Cropping an image means cutting out only the desired portion of the image. To crop an image, follow these steps. First, select the image. Second, click the Format tab that appears under Picture Tools. Third, in the Size group, click the Crop command. The cropping handles appear around the image. Fourth, click, hold and drag a handle to crop the unwanted part of the image. Click the Crop command again to crop the image. Appearance of the image. Changing the appearance means you can change the image's brightness, make corrections, add artistic effects, etc. These options are available in the Adjust group and the Picture Styles group on the Format tab. Adjust group. 3 important options available in the Adjust group are Corrections. You can use this command to sharpen or soften an image. You can also adjust the brightness and contrast, that is, how dark or light the picture will appear. Color. You can use this command to adjust the image's saturation, tone, or color. Artistic effects. This command can be used to add artistic effects like watercolors, pastels, etc. Artistic effects may not work with some clip art images. Picture Styles group. This group contains a variety of styles like frames, borders, etc. that can be applied to an image. Wrap text. Wrap text is a feature that automatically starts a new line when a word in a sentence reaches a border. This border may be the border of a text box or a picture, image, or the border of a cell or a margin. There are different options to make text wrap around a picture or an image in Word 2013. To make text wrap around an image, follow these steps. First, select the image. Second, click the Format tab that appears under Picture Tools. In the Arrange group, click the Wrap Text command. Third, when you hover over various text wrapping options, a live preview of each text wrapping appears in the document. Select the desired option. The text will wrap around the image. Fourth, if you want to move the image, click and drag the image to the desired location. Alignment guides will help you align the image to a piece of text or another picture. Alignment guides are the green horizontal and vertical lines that appear when you move an image. They help you align a picture or a text box to a margin, a header, or a paragraph. Position. The position option helps to place the image or text box at a particular place on the page. The text flows around it automatically. To use this command, follow these steps. First, select the image. Second, click the Format tab that appears under Picture Tools. Third, in the Arrange group, click the Position command. Fourth, select and click on the desired position in the gallery that appears. Chapter 5. Advanced Features in Word 2013. Headers and Footers. A header is a piece of text that is printed at the top of each page in the top margin in a document. A footer is the text printed at the bottom of each page in the bottom margin. By default, headers and footers are printed 0.5 inches from the top of the page and from the bottom of the page respectively. We can use headers and footers to give additional information such as the document name, chapter name, page number, date, etc. Inserting headers and footers. To add a header and footer, follow these steps. First, click the Insert tab. Second, click Header in the Header and Footer group. You will see the header gallery with different header designs. Third, click the blank header style or scroll down to choose any other style. You will now see the Design tab under Header and Footer Tools. This tab appears only when your cursor is in the header or footer area. Fourth, type the header text. In some designs, you need to fill in the blanks for information such as document title and author's name. Click Go to Footer in the Navigation group. The footer area will appear at the bottom of the document. Or you can also click Footer in the Header and Footer group to display the footer gallery. Click the footer style you want. Sixth, type the footer text and fill in the blanks if required. Seventh, now click Close Header and Footer in the ribbon or press Escape key. Adding date or time. To insert the current date or time, follow these steps. First, double-click in the header or footer area. Second, place the insertion point at the position where you want to place the date or time. Click Date and Time in the Insert group. The Date and Time dialog box appears. Third, select a date or time format. If you want to show the date when the document is printed, or if you want the date to change automatically every time you open the document, select the checkbox of Update Automatically option. Click OK. The current date or time will appear at the current cursor position. Fourth, click Close Header and Footer in the ribbon or press Escape key. Adding page numbers. To add page numbers, follow these steps. First, double-click anywhere in the header or footer area. If there is no header or footer at present, then double-click near the top or bottom margins. The Design tab under the Header and Footer tools appears. Second, click the Page Number command in the Header and Footer group. Bring the mouse pointer to the Current Position option and select the desired numbering style. The page number will appear in the document at the position desired in the style chosen. Editing and deleting headers and footers. To edit or delete a header or footer, follow these steps. First, double-click on the header or footer. Edit or delete the text as required. Second, click Close Header and Footer in the ribbon or press Escape key. Footnotes and endnotes. We can use footnotes and endnotes to give explanation, comments or references for text in a document. Footnotes appear at the bottom of the page, whereas endnotes appear at the end of a document or section. A note reference mark and the corresponding note text are the two linked parts of a footnote or an endnote. The note reference mark is next to the relevant text in the main document. It can be a number, a character, or a combination of them. It indicates that additional information need to be found in the linked footnote or endnote. There is no limit of characters for footnote or endnote. You can format the footnote and endnote just as you would format any other text. Inserting footnote or an endnote. To add a footnote or an endnote, follow these steps. First, position the cursor at the point where you want to insert a reference mark. Second, click the References tab and do one of the following. Click Insert Endnote or Insert Footnote in the Footnotes group as shown. This inserts the note reference at once. Go to the step 4 directly, or click the Footnote and Endnote dialog box launcher to display the footnote and endnote dialog box. Third, in the Footnote and Endnote dialog box, select footnotes or endnotes as desired. In the number format box, select a format for the note reference. In the Start At box, type or select a value for the first note reference. You can use a symbol instead of a numerical or alphabetical note reference. Click Symbol to display the symbol dialog box. Select a symbol and click OK. Click Apply to close the footnote and endnote dialog box. Word inserts the reference in your document. Fourth, the cursor will now move next to the footnote or endnote number at the bottom of the page or at the end of the document. Type the text for the endnote or footnote. Fifth, double-click the footnote or endnote number to return to the document. Notice the document with footnotes shown alongside. Page backgrounds. Apart from adding footnote, endnote, and page number, you can also add watermarks, change the page color, or also apply page border. These commands are available on the Design tab in the Page Background group. Adding watermark. A diffused picture or text can be added to a document as watermark. To add a watermark, follow these steps. First, open your Word document that you want to add a watermark to. Second, click the Design tab in the menu bar and then choose the Watermark button under the Page Background group. Third, the Watermark menu opens where some watermarks and formats are available. You can select which one you want to insert into your Word document. You can also use a custom watermark like your name, your company name or logo. Note: you can also insert a picture as a watermark. To do that, select the Picture Watermark radio button and then browse for your watermark picture. Now click the desired picture. Changing page color. To change the color of the page, click the Page Color option and click on the desired color. Applying page borders. To apply page borders, follow these steps. First, click Page Border. It opens the Borders and Shading dialog box with the Page Border tab selected. Second, select the desired border style from the available options. Third, click OK. Chapter 6. Working with Text in PowerPoint. Inserting a text box. The boxes with dotted borders you see on a slide are called placeholders. You enter text in the placeholders. Besides these placeholders, you can add text boxes to a slide to add some extra text. The steps to insert a text box on a slide are as follows. First, click the Insert tab. Second, in the text group, click the text box option. The mouse pointer changes to a sword shape. Third, move the pointer to the place where you want to add a text box. Fourth, click and drag the mouse on the slide to insert a text box. Fifth, you can move a text box from one place to another on the slide. Move the pointer over the border. When the pointer changes to a four-headed arrow shape, click and drag the text box to a new location. Click and then type in the text box to insert text. Deleting or replacing text from a slide. To delete text from a slide, select the text and then press the delete key. You can replace a selection with new text by typing the new text over the selected text. Formatting text. Text formatting in PowerPoint is similar to the one that you did in MS Word 2013. To apply character formatting to text, follow these steps. First, select the text to be formatted. Second, click Home tab. The font group on the Home tab offers a quick way to apply some of the most commonly used character formatting options. Font, select a new font for the text. Font size, change the size of the text. Bold, make the text bold. Italic, italicize the text. Underline, underline the text. Text shadow, add a shadow to the selected text. Strike through, cross out something by drawing a line through it. Font dialog box launcher. Font color, change the color of the text. Character spacing, adjust the spacing between characters. Clear all formatting. Remove all formatting from the text, leaving only normal, unformatted text. Changing case. To change case, follow these steps. First, select the text. Click the Home tab. Second, in the font group, click the Change Case button and select one of the following options. Sentence case. The first character of the first word of the sentence is capitalized. Lowercase. All the characters are in lowercase. Small letters. Uppercase. All the characters are in uppercase. Capital letters. Capitalize each word. The first letter of each word is capitalized. Toggle case. This option changes lowercase characters to uppercase and uppercase characters to lowercase. Changing alignment. You can align the text within a placeholder or the text box. The paragraph group on the Home tab is used for this purpose. Changing horizontal alignment. Text can be aligned horizontally in 4 different ways: left, right, center, and justified by clicking Align Left, Align Right, Center, and Justify button. Changing vertical alignment. You can use the Align Text command available in the paragraph group on the Home tab to adjust the vertical alignment of the text. Follow these steps to do so. First, select the text. Second, click the Align Text button and select the desired option in the drop-down menu that opens. Changing text direction. The steps to change the text direction are as follows. First, select the text. Second, click the Text Direction command in the paragraph group. Third, choose a direction for the text, horizontal, rotated, etc. in the drop-down menu. Creating bulleted and numbered lists. Sometimes we need to mark important lines or items of a list. For this, we can use bullets or numbers. A bulleted list is usually used when the order of items in a list does not matter, unordered. By default, PowerPoint uses a simple black dot as a bullet. A numbered list is used when the order of items in a list is important. Example, a sequence of events or steps. To create a bulleted or numbered list, follow these steps. First, position the cursor at the location where you want to start the list or select the paragraphs you want to include in the list. Second, click the Home tab. In the paragraph group, click the Bullets or Numbering drop-down menu arrow. The bullet or numbering library appears. Third, when you move the mouse over various bullets or numbering styles, a live preview of the style will appear in the document. Select the desired bullet or numbering style. Chapter 7. More commands in PowerPoint 2013. Adding slides. You can add a new slide to the presentation in different ways. Office themes, duplicate selected slides, slides from outline, or reuse slides. You have learned how to insert slides using Office themes. You will learn about duplicating slides and reusing slides here. To create a duplicate of a slide in your presentation, follow these steps. First, select the slide or slides to be duplicated. Second, click the Home tab and then in Slides group, click New Slide. Third, click Duplicate Selected Slides. The duplicate slide or slides will appear below the selected slides in the slide navigation pane. Reusing slides. You can reuse slides from an existing presentation. To do so, follow these steps. First, select the Reuse Slides option. The Reuse Slides task pane appears to the right of the screen. Second, click the Browse button and select Browse File. The Browse dialog box opens. Third, go to the folder containing the PowerPoint file from which you want to reuse the slides and select the file. Fourth, click Open in the Browse dialog box. Fifth, click on the desired slide from the list of slides to insert it in your presentation. Changing background of slides. You can change the background color, shade, pattern or texture of a slide to give it a new appearance. You can also use a picture as the background. To change the background style, follow these steps. First, click the Design tab and choose the Format Background option in the Customize group. The Format Background task pane appears to the right of the screen. Second, select the Solid Fill, a solid color, apply a gradient, a picture or a texture or a pattern as the background for the slides. Insert tab. Insert tab has various command groups to insert different types of objects. Let's study about some important commands. Insert tab command groups. Insert pictures, insert online pictures, insert screenshot, create photo album, insert shapes, insert smart art, insert chart, insert text box, insert word art, insert video, insert audio. The options available in these command groups allow you to insert text boxes, pictures, shapes, smart art, screenshots, etc. You already know how to insert text boxes, word art, pictures and shapes in Word. The procedure is the same in PowerPoint too. Now you will learn what smart art is, how to insert and use it, how to insert screenshots, video and audio files, and also how to create a photo album. Smart Art Graphics. Smart Art contains graphical diagrams to present data and information in the most readable and easy manner. The Smart Art graphics are grouped into 7 categories, namely list, process, cycle, hierarchy, relationship, matrix, and pyramid. Inserting Smart Art. To add a Smart Art to your slide, follow these steps. First, click the Insert tab. Second, click on Smart Art in the Illustrations group. The Choose a Smart Art graphic dialog box appears. Third, select a category, say Cycle, and then select a graphic layout. Click OK. The Smart Art graphic appears on the current slide. Click in each text box and type the text you want. Editing Smart Art. 2 additional tabs appear on the ribbon under Smart Art Tools, Design and Format when a Smart Art is added to the presentation. The Format tab is similar to that used for adding pictures and shapes. The Design tab has 4 groups. Create Graphic. You can use it to expand the Smart Art graphic. If you click Add Shape, you can add shapes after, before, above or below the selected spot or shape. Layouts. You can use it to switch to a different Smart Art layout. Smart Art Styles. This group has 2 commands, Change Colors and Smart Art Styles. A Smart Art style is a combination of things like line styles, beveling, shadow effects, and 3D effects that you can apply to your Smart Art graphic. Reset. This option is used if you do not like the design changes you have made and want to go back to the original Smart Art. It also has the option to convert the text to Smart Art graphic and vice versa. Inserting a screenshot. A screenshot is the exact picture of screen currently being displayed on the desktop. To take a screenshot and insert it in your slide, follow these steps. First, click the slide where you want to add a screenshot. Second, click the Insert tab. Click on Screenshot in the Images group. You can add the screenshot full window. Third, click the desired thumbnail in the available windows gallery. Fourth, click Screen Clipping, and when the pointer becomes a plus, press and hold the left mouse button to select the area of your screen that you want to capture. If many windows are open, click the window you want to take a screenshot. Before clicking Screenshot, Screen Clipping. When you click Screen Clipping, the program you are working in is minimized and only the window that you selected is available for clipping. Creating a photo album. The photo album feature is used to create a slideshow of the selected photographs. When you use the photo album feature, PowerPoint always creates a new presentation. To create a photo album, follow these steps. First, click the Insert tab and select Photo Album in the Images group. Second, click on File or Disk button in the Photo Album dialog box to add pictures to the photo album. The Insert New Picture dialog box will appear. Third, select as many pictures you need from your folders and click on Insert. All the inserted pictures now appear in the Photo Album dialog box. You can rearrange pictures by clicking the up and down arrows below the Pictures in Album box. Fourth, click the drop-down menu arrows next to Picture Layout and Frame Shape in the Album Layout section to choose the picture layout and the photo shape you want. Fifth, click the Create button. A new photo album presentation is created. Inserting audio and video files. You can easily insert songs, voice recordings, movie clips, etc. in your presentation. Adding them in the slides makes the presentation more effective and attractive. Inserting sound. To add a sound file to a slide, follow these steps. First, click the Insert tab. Second, click the Audio option in the Media group. A menu opens. Third, you can choose one of these different sources. Online audio. In the Insert Audio dialog box that appears, type a search term for an audio file in the box and press Enter. Select a file from the list of sound files that appear and click on the Insert button. Audio on my PC. In the Insert Audio dialog box that appears, locate and select the desired audio file and then click on the Insert button. Record audio. In the Record Sound dialog box that appears, click on the Record button to record your voice. After recording is complete, click on the Stop button. Click on OK to insert the recorded sound file in your presentation. Fourth, the audio file gets inserted into the slide and is selected by default. Drag the sound icon that appears on the slide to the desired position. Click the Play or Pause button to play the audio file. The timeline indicates how much of the file has played out. Two additional tabs, Format and Playback, appear under Audio Tools. Sixth, the Playback tab has the Audio Options group, which has commands to control how the audio will play. These are given below. Volume. This is used to change the volume of the audio. Start. You can use it to control whether the audio will start automatically or when the mouse is clicked. Hide during show. This is used to hide the audio icon when the slideshow is playing. Loop until stopped. It replays the audio again and again until it is stopped. Rewind after playing. You can use it to return to the audio file to the beginning when it stops playing. Inserting video. To add a video to the presentation, follow these steps. First, click the video option in the Media group on the Insert tab. A menu opens. Second, you can choose one of these different sources. Online video. You can select and insert a video file directly from the internet. Video on my PC. Clicking Video on my PC will open the Insert Video dialog box. Locate and insert the desired video and click Insert. The video will be added to the slide. Third, click the Play or Pause button right below the video. The video will play and the timeline will advance. As in the case of audio, two additional tabs, Format and Playback, appear under Video Tools. Fourth, The Playback tab has the Video Options group, which has commands to control how the video will play. These are given below. Volume. You can use it to increase or decrease the audio volume of the video. Start. It helps you control whether the video will start automatically or when the mouse is clicked. Play full screen. It makes the video stretch to the entire screen while playing. Hide while not playing. You can hide the video icon when not playing by using this option. Loop until stopped. It is used to replay the video again and again until it is stopped. Rewind after playing. You can use this option to return the video to the beginning when it stops playing. Slide transitions and animations. Slide transition and animation are very important features in PowerPoint that helps you make the slides appear, disappear, move, etc. Let's know about these features. Slide transitions. In a presentation, when one slide ends, the second slide moves in during a slideshow. The way one slide follows the other on the screen is called a transition. To add transitions to slides, follow these steps. First, select the slide from the slide navigation pane. The transition will be applied between this slide and the previous slide. Second, click the Transitions tab. Third, in the transition to this slide group, none is applied to each slide by default. Click the More button to see all the available options. Click a transition to apply it to the selected slide. This will automatically preview the transition. Fourth, in the timing group, do the following. A. Click the arrow next to sound to display the list of transition sounds. When you hover over a sound, you will hear it. Click the sound you want to add. B. Select a desired duration to set the time limit. C. Click Apply to All if you want to use this transition to all slides in the presentation. However, you can use different transition style for each slide. D. Advance Slide lets you choose how to advance a slide. Check on mouse click if you want the slide to stay on screen till the user clicks the mouse or presses a key. Check after and adjust the time if you want the next slide to appear after a certain duration automatically. Animations. Adding movements to the text or objects on a slide is called animation. It is an important feature of a presentation that attracts the attention of viewers to a certain part of the slide. To animate text or an object, follow these steps. First, select the object you want to animate. Click the Animations tab. Second, in the Animation group, click the More button to display the gallery of animation effects. Select the desired effect out of these. Entrance effect for how the object will enter the slide. Emphasis effect for when the object is on the slide. Exit effect for how the object will leave the slide. Motion paths effect to make the object move in a specified pattern on the slide. Third, the number 1 appears next to the text or object. Also in the slide pane, a star symbol appears next to the slide. Fourth, similarly, you can add animations to other text or objects on the same slide. They will be numbered 2, 3, 4 and so on and will run in that sequence. Fifth, you can add more than one animation to the same object. Sixth, to decide when an animation will start, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Start box in the Timing group and choose any one option out of these. On click, if you want the animation to begin after you click on the slide. With Previous, if you want the animation to begin at the same time as the previous one. After Previous, if you want the animation to begin immediately after the previous one. Seventh, If you want to change the order of the animations, select an animation and click the Move Earlier or Move Later option of Reorder Animation in the timing group. 8th, to remove an animation, select it and click the Delete key. Viewing and organizing slides. There are various ways available in PowerPoint 2013 to view the presentation. Each view is best suited for a particular purpose. The views are Normal, Notes page, Outline view, Reading view, Slide sorter. You can find PowerPoint views at 2 places. First, the Presentation Views group on the View tab. Second, the bottom right side of the status bar. Normal view. The normal view is used to create and edit slides. It is also the default view of PowerPoint. It has 3 parts. The slide navigation pane displays thumbnail size images of all the slides in your presentation. You can move, add, or delete slides in the slide navigation pane. Click the thumbnail of a slide to view it in the slide pane. The slide pane displays an enlarged view of the current or selected slide. You can add text, insert pictures, smart art, movies, sounds, etc. to your slide here. You can use the Notes pane to write an important point or note about the slide. You can refer to these notes for that slide while giving your presentation. Outline view. The outline view is present in Presentation Views group of the View tab. It shows the slide text in outline form. You can use this view to edit your slide text quickly and view the content of multiple slides at once. You can also type directly in the outline view to make changes to the slide text. Slide sorter view. The slide sorter view displays all the slides for the presentation in miniature or thumbnail form. This makes it easy to add, delete, and move slides. Reading view. This view fills the PowerPoint window with a preview of your presentation. You can easily navigate through your slides using the navigation buttons available at the bottom right. Notes page view. Notes page view is used to add notes to the slides in your presentation. If you click the Notes page view, you will move to a page view with the slide in the top half and a text box below it to add your notes. These are useful to help you remember important points and are also called speaker's notes. The note is not visible to the viewers of presentation. Chapter 8. Introduction to MS Excel 2013. Like MS Word and MS PowerPoint, MS Excel is also an application software and a part of MS Office suite. When you install MS Office 2013, MS Excel 2013 automatically gets installed. MS Excel is a spreadsheet program used to perform simple calculation and organize data in an easy and presentable manner. It has many built-in features of mathematical functions, graphs, sorting data, tables, etc. to help carry out the required functions. A sheet of MS Excel 2013 containing data arranged in the form of rows and columns is called spreadsheet. In this chapter, you get a brief introduction to use MS Excel. Starting Excel 2013. To start Excel 2013, follow these steps. First, select Start, All Programs, Microsoft Office 2013, Excel 2013. The Excel Start screen appears. Second, click on Blank Workbook. A blank Excel worksheet appears. A worksheet is a page containing a grid of cells made up of rows and columns. Components of the Excel 2013 window. Excel Worksheet, Quick Access Toolbar, Dialog Box Launcher, Active Workbook, Title Bar, Ribbon, Active Cell, Name Box, Row, Formula Bar, Column, horizontal scroll bar, vertical scroll bar, zoom control, worksheet view options, active sheet tab, new sheet icon. The components of the Excel 2013 window are given below. Quick Access Toolbar. The Quick Access Toolbar is located on the top left corner of the window. It provides quick access to certain frequently used commands. By default, it includes save, undo, and redo commands. You can add more commands to it. Title bar. The title bar is located at the top of the window. It displays the name of the opened workbook in which you are currently working. A workbook is a collection of worksheets. The right side of the title bar contains Help, Ribbon Display Options, Minimize, Restore or Maximize, and Close buttons. Ribbon. Below the title bar is located the ribbon. It has a number of tabs, each divided into certain groups. Each group consists of related commands. Some groups have a small arrow at the bottom right corner. This is the dialog box launcher. Clicking on the arrow will open a dialog box in which you would find some more commands available in that group. Scroll bars. There are two scroll bars to move through the worksheet, the vertical bar on the right and the horizontal bar at the bottom. To scroll one cell at a time, click the scroll button with arrows at the corner of the scroll bars. To scroll more, drag the slider up and down, left and right in the scroll bars. Status bar. The status bar is present at the bottom of the window, which displays the following. Worksheet view options. Normal view. By default, a worksheet opens in normal view. This view shows all the rows and columns in a worksheet. Page layout view. It divides a worksheet into individual pages. Page break view. It gives you an overview of a worksheet with page breaks and tells you how many printed pages would be required to hold all the data in the worksheet. You can adjust the page break to increase or decrease the number of pages that will hold your data. Zoom control. It has a slider which you can drag left or right to decrease or increase the zoom. The number to the right of the slider reflects the zoom percentage. Active workbook. Each workbook in Excel holds one or more worksheets. The workbook on which you are working is called an active workbook. Worksheet tabs. By default, a workbook in Excel 2013 shows only one worksheet and its tab is named Sheet 1. You can select the plus sign, new sheet icon next to it to add more worksheets. You can use the arrow buttons on the left to move between the worksheets. Rows and columns. A worksheet in Excel 2013 has 10,48,576 rows and 16,384 columns. Horizontal arrangement of cells are called rows. Rows are numbered from top to bottom along the left edge as 1, 2, 3, and so on. Vertical arrangement of cells are called columns. Columns are labeled from left to right using letters of the alphabet. The first column is A, the second B, and so on until Z. Then they are labeled as AA through XFD. Cell. The intersection of a row and a column is called a cell. It is the smallest unit of a worksheet. Each intersection or cell has a unique address formed by the combination of a column letter and a row number. For example, the cell formed at the intersection of column D and row 5 is named D5. A highlighted cell boundary shows that the cell is active. Formula bar. When you enter data or formula in a cell, it is also displayed in the formula bar. It is also used for entering or editing the cell contents. Name box. the name box is present to the left of the formula bar. It displays the address of the selected cell. Data types. You can enter 3 types of data in an Excel worksheet. These are text, entries of names, place, address, etc. Numbers, entries of any numerical values. Formulas, any mathematical calculations like addition, division and multiplication. Entering data. To enter data in a cell, select the cell, start typing and then press Enter key. As you type, the data gets typed in the formula bar and in the active cell at the same time. It can be used to enter or edit data or the formula in a cell. 2 small buttons appear to the left of the formula bar as soon as you start typing in a cell. The X button is called the Cancel button and is used to cancel the data entry without pressing delete. The tick button is called the Enter button. Clicking this button is equivalent to pressing Enter. The FX button is called the Insert function button. The use of this button will be discussed in higher classes. Creating a new workbook. A workbook opens only one worksheet at a time and it can contain a maximum of 255 worksheets. Follow these steps to create a new workbook. First, click the File tab. A backstage view appears. Second, click on New. Third, click on Blank Workbook. A new blank workbook appears. Saving a workbook. After creating a workbook, you must save it for future use. To save a workbook, follow these steps. First, click the File tab. Save as backstage view appears. Click Save if you want to save the workbook with an existing name. Second, click Save as if you want to save the workbook for the first time or save the existing workbook with a new name. The Save As dialog box appears. Third, if you want to save the file on your computer, click Computer. Fourth, click Browse. Fifth, the Save As dialog box appears. Select the location and then type a file name. Click on the Save button. The workbook will be saved with the extension .xlsx. You can also save a file by clicking the Save icon on the Quick Access toolbar. Selecting cells. We need to select cells to make changes in them. You can select one cell or a range of cells for this purpose. A range is a rectangular block of contiguous cells. Contiguous cells means cells that touch each other, especially along a line. There are 3 ways to select a range. Using the mouse. To select a range of cells using the mouse, do the following. First, click the cell from which you wish to start your selection. Second, now holding the left mouse button, drag the mouse pointer. It changes to a thick plus sign to the diagonally opposite corner cell. For example, if the range A1 to D6 is to be selected, place the mouse pointer at cell A1, holding the left mouse button, drag it diagonally up to the cell D6. The range A1 to D6 is represented as A1 colon D6. When you select a range, all the cells in it appear highlighted except the active cell. Using the Extend mode. Sometimes the range of cells to be selected is very large. In this case, dragging the mouse through the entire range can be difficult. In such case, do the following. First, click a corner cell or the starting cell of the range. Second, press F8 key. The status bar shows that the Extend selection mode is on. Third, click the diagonally opposite cell, that is the last cell of the range. The range of cells is selected. Fourth, press F8 key again to turn off Extend selection or press Escape. Using the Go To command. You can also use Go To option to go to the desired cell. This option can also be used to select a range of cells. To do this, follow these steps. First, click the cell at one corner of the range. Second, click the Home tab. Third, in the Editing group, click the Find and Select button. Fourth, click Go To or press F5 or press Ctrl+G. The Go To dialog box opens. Fifth, type the cell address of the opposite corner of the range in the reference text box simply or enter the range B2:F7. Sixth, in the first case, hold down the Shift key when clicking OK or pressing Enter. In the second case, just click OK or press Enter. Selecting multiple ranges simultaneously. To select multiple ranges, follow these steps. First, select the first range of cells. Second, hold the Control key and select another range of cells. Third, repeat step 2 to select more ranges if required. Selecting a complete row or column. To select a complete row, click the row header. To select a complete column, click the column header. Selecting the entire worksheet. To select the entire worksheet, click the Select All button at the intersection of the row and column headers. Chapter 9. Editing in MS Excel 2013. So far, you studied how to enter data in cells as well as how to select a range of cells in different ways. In this chapter, you will study how to edit cell contents and insert or delete cells, rows, and columns. Editing cell contents. Sometimes we need to change or modify the contents of the cells. There are two ways in which you can edit the cell contents: by overwriting, thus changing the content completely, by modifying them partially. Overwriting. Overwriting means writing over the existing text, that is, changing the cell content completely. To overwrite cell contents, just select the cell and type in the new text. Press Enter key on the keyboard or click the Enter button on the formula bar. Partial modification. You can also change only a part of the cell content rather than overwriting all contents. This is called partial modification. To modify a cell content partially, you can use any one of the following ways. Double-click the cell to edit the cell contents in a cell directly, or select the cell and press F2 to edit the cell contents in a cell directly, or select the cell and click the formula bar to edit the cell contents in the formula bar. The data will correct itself in both the cell and the formula bar in all the modifications. Whichever method you use, the word Edit appears at the left corner of the status bar at the bottom of the screen. Undo and redo. The undo command is used to reverse the action you have performed. To do this, click the Undo button on the Quick Access toolbar. You can also undo several actions at once. Click the menu arrow next to the Undo button. From the list, select the actions that you want to undo and then click the list. Excel reverses all the actions selected. The Redo button will stay inactive and show Can't Redo until you undo an action. To redo an action that you have undone, click the Redo button on the Quick Access toolbar. Deleting cell contents. To delete cell contents, you can choose any one of the following. Select the cells and press Delete key, or select the cells, right-click and select Clear Contents from the context menu that appears, or click the Home tab in the Editing group, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Clear button and select Clear Contents. The selected content gets deleted. Copying and moving data. There are many ways of copying and moving data from one part or location of the worksheet to another. Copying cell contents. To copy data from one location to another, you can follow any of the following methods. using copy and paste commands. First, select the range of cells to be copied. Second, click the Home tab and then click Copy in the clipboard group. You will see a dotted line around the selected cells. Third, click on the upper left cell of the range where you want to copy data. Fourth, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Paste command. The different paste options appear on the screen. Fifth, as you hover the mouse pointer over each option of the Paste command, you will see a live preview of what the pasted data would look like. Click the desired option. The selected data is copied to the new location. Using Context menu. First, select the range of cells to be copied. Second, right-click the selected range and click Copy in the context menu that appears. Third, right-click on the cell in which you want to paste the data. Click the desired paste option available in the context menu. Moving cell contents. Cut and paste commands are also used to move cell contents from one location to another. Using cut and paste commands. To move data using cut and paste commands, follow these steps. First, select the range of cells to be moved. Second, click the Home tab and then click Cut in the clipboard group. You will see a dotted line around the selected cells. Third, click on the upper left cell of the range where you want to move the data. Fourth, click the Paste button. The selected data is moved to the new location. Using Context menu. First, select the range of cells to be moved. Second, right-click the selected range and click Cut in the context menu. Third, right-click on the cell where you want to move the data. Click the desired Paste option available in the context menu. The drag and drop method can also be used to move cell content. Position the cursor on the boundary of the selected range so that the cursor changes into a cross shape. While pressing the left mouse button, drag the data to the desired location. The data is moved when you release the mouse button. Inserting cells, rows, and columns. You can also insert cells, rows, and columns into the worksheet. Let's learn how. Inserting cells. To insert a cell or a block of cells, follow these steps. First, select the range of cells where you want to insert the block of cells. Second, click the Home tab. In the Cells group, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Insert button. Select Insert Cells. The Insert dialog box is displayed. It has 4 options. The following table shows the options and their results. Options of the Insert dialog box. Options: Action performed. Shift cells right. Blank cells are filled in the selected range. Existing cells are shifted right. Shift cells down. Blank cells are filled in the selected range. Existing cells are shifted down. Entire row. Rows that pass through the selected range move down and new rows are inserted. Entire column. Columns that pass through the selected range move right and new columns are inserted. Third, select the appropriate option and click OK. The output after selecting Shift Cells Down is shown in the screenshot. Inserting rows and columns. To insert a new row, first select the row above which you want to insert the new row. Similarly, if you want to insert a new column, select the column to the left of which you want to insert the new column. Follow these steps to do so. First, click the Home tab. In the Cells group, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Insert button. Second, select Insert Sheet Rows or Insert Sheet Columns. The new row or column is inserted in the worksheet. The selected row is shifted down while the selected column shifts to the right. Deleting cells, rows, and columns. You can also delete cells, rows, and columns. Follow these steps to do it. Deleting cells. select the range of cells you want to delete. Second, click the Home tab. In the Cells group, click the drop-down menu arrow of the Delete button. Third, select the Delete Cells options from the menu that appears. The Delete dialog box is displayed. It has 4 options that are given in the table below. Options of the Delete dialog box. Options: Action performed. Shift cells left. The selected cells are deleted and the cells on the right are shifted left. Shift cells up. The selected cells are deleted and the cells below them are shifted up. Entire row. Rows through the selected cells are deleted. Entire column. Columns through the selected range are deleted. Fourth, select the appropriate option and click OK. Look at the result after selecting the Shift Cells Up option. Deleting rows and columns. To delete a row or rows, first select the row or rows you wish to delete. Similarly, in the case of columns, first select the column or columns you wish to delete. Follow these steps to do so. First, in the Cells group, click the drop-down menu of the Delete button. Second, select Delete Sheet Rows or Delete Sheet Columns as required from the menu that appears. The selected rows or columns are deleted. The remaining rows are shifted up to fill the space left by the deleted rows. The remaining column or columns shift to the left. Changing row height. When you increase the font size, Excel automatically adjusts the row height to accommodate the increased font. If you change the font size of a cell to 20 points, Excel increases the row height so that the entire text is visible. You can also set the row height manually. To change height of a single row, click on the lower border of the row head and drag it up or down until the row is of the desired height. To change the row height for several rows at once, follow these steps. First, select the rows, click the Home tab. Second, in the Cells group, click the drop-down menu of Format button. Third, select the Row Height option from the menu that appears. The Row Height dialog box appears. Fourth, enter a value in points and click OK. The height of all the selected rows is changed to the new value. Changing column width. To change the width of a single column manually, click and hold on the right border of a column heading and drag it to the left or right until the column is of the desired width. To change the width of several columns at once, follow these steps. First, select the columns and click the Home tab. Second, in the Cells group, click the drop-down menu of Format button. Third, select the Column Width option from the menu that appears. The Column Width dialog box appears. Fourth, enter a value in points and click OK. The width of all the selected columns is changed. Chapter 10. Email. Email is also known as the electronic mail. It is one of the most important services provided on the internet. Using email, you can send and receive text, images, audio, and video files. Earlier, email service was available only on computers, but these days, email service can be availed on smartphones as they have almost all the facilities that a computer has for this purpose. Advantage of an email. An email has many advantages. Some of these are as follows. Email has made sending and receiving mails quicker and easier. An email message reaches its destination in a few seconds or minutes. Emails can be sent anytime and anywhere in the world. They are very economical to send or receive. Multiple copies of a message can be sent to any number of people. If an email is not delivered, you receive a notification explaining the problem. You can write an email message in advance and send it at desired time. Email address. To send and receive emails, you need to have an email address or email ID. These email addresses are unique for every internet user. An email address always appears in a format, a username or user ID, and a domain name separated by @ pronounced as @ singhgarima@gmail.com. Username, domain name. The username is unique and the domain name is common to all the individuals using a particular mail server for sending or receiving emails. A user can have more than one account on a single domain but with different usernames. You can create an account with the same username on a different domain like Yahoo. Then the email address will be singhgarima@yahoo.com. Sign in. To access your account, follow these steps. First, ensure that your computer is connected to the internet. Second, double-click on the web browser icon. Third, type www.gmail.com in the address bar of the browser window and press the Enter key. Fourth, type your username and click the Next button. Fifth, now type your password. Now click on the Next button. Your Gmail account opens in the web browser. Sending an email. To send an email, follow these steps. First, sign in to your email account. Second, click on Compose button on the top left of your browser window. This opens a new message window to create a new email. Third, fill the details in the following fields. In the To field, type the email address of the person to whom the email is to be sent. You can enter more than one address by pressing comma after each email address. In CC, carbon copy field, type the email addresses of those whom you want to send a copy of the email. This is done just to intimate that person about the mail you have sent. In BCC, blind carbon copy field, we type the email addresses of those persons whom we are sending the email but do not want the other recipients to know about it. Fourth, type the message in the blank area. Fifth, after typing the email, click on the Send button to send the email. Attaching files. Sometimes you need to attach other documents with an application form by email. Similarly, you can send music, video, image, and other files along with your email. This file is called an attachment, and the process of sending such files is called attaching. To send an attached file, click on the Attach Files button at the bottom of the new message screen. This will open a dialog box. Browse to select the file on your computer and click on the Open button to attach the file to your email. The file may take some time to attach depending on the size of the file. The attached file will be displayed as at the bottom of the new message screen. You can click on Cross to remove the unwanted attachment from the email. You can add more than one file as an attachment by repeating the above steps. If the attached file or files are of the size more than 25 MB, Gmail will display a notification box shown. Click on Not Now button and remove some of the attachments. You can send rest of the files through another email. Reading an email. If your Gmail account is already open, click on Inbox located below the Compose button. If the email account is not open, sign in to your email account. The number enclosed in brackets after Inbox shows the number of emails in your account. The unread emails are shown in bold effect and the read emails appear as normal text with shaded background. Click on an email to open it. Click on the Back to Inbox button on top of your email screen to go back to your email account window. You can delete an unwanted email by selecting the email and clicking on the Delete button. Downloading attachments. If a received email contains the symbol, it means it contains a file as attachment. To open an attachment, follow these steps. First, click on the email to open it. Second, scroll down and place the mouse pointer on the attachment. You will see two buttons. Third, click on the download button to save a copy of this file attachment in your computer. Reply and forward. You can reply a received email easily. Reply option saves your time to re-enter email address of the sender and subject of the email. It automatically selects the email address from where email has been received and the subject that the sender has written. The steps to reply to an email are as follows. First, click to open drop-down menu. Second, select reply to send an email to the sender. Select reply to all to send the email to all the persons marked in to or CC fields. Third, type the message. Fourth, click on the send button. Forwarding an email means sending a copy of received email to someone else. You can forward an email received from sender to someone else using the forward option. The steps to forward an email are as follows. First, click to open drop-down menu. Second, select forward. Third, type the email address in the to field. Fourth, click on the send button. Sign out. Always close your email account after completing your work. This process of exiting from email account is known as sign out. It is very important to sign out from your account so that no one else using that computer can read your emails or send unwanted emails using your email address. The steps to sign out are as follows. First, click on the icon on the top right corner of your browser window. Second, click on the sign out button.